All right, class, here we go. Let's review and talk about the basics of HTML and CSS. Now, at this point, you should know some of these, but I want you to review it when I talk about just knowing the differences, about doing things different ways, how there's two ways to do this, two ways to do that, so on and so forth. So what we're going to do is we're going to go on our desktop of our computer, and we're going to right-click or make a new folder, depending if you're on a Mac or PC. So I'm going to make a new folder, and let's call it Day 1. Day 1, all lowercase, no spaces. Super important in web design. You never want to have capitals or spaces or funky characters. We want like the bare bones. So I'm just going to call this Day-1. All lowercase. And this goes for all your JPEGs, GIFs, and PNGs, your file names. In web design, again, no capitals and no spaces. I'm going to open up brackets. And when brackets opens up, you see the dark gray bar on the left-hand side. What we want to do is tell brackets that this folder that we just made on our desktop is where everything's going to be. It's our root folder. It's our main folder. So I'm going to click it and drag it and drop it in on that left-hand side. So when I click and drop it in, you should be able to see the name of your folder at the top where it should say Day 1. You'll notice there's nothing there because it's an empty folder. So I'm going to open that folder up on my desktop real quick, and I'm going to make another folder in here, and I'm going to call it Images. You'll notice how this will update in brackets. If you do not see this updating, quit and start this process over again. So what's important to remember is that brackets is just linking to this folder. It's not actually embedding anything in your document. So you want to keep everything organized and never delete anything from your root folder. Now, in our images folder, we need to add an image. So I'm going to just jump onto the internet, and I'm going to grab an image, and we're going to put it in. So you can grab an image of anything. I just always go for the cute puppy. And at this point, I'm really not even concerned about size or anything else. I'm just going to grab an adorable picture of a puppy. And I will put this into that folder. You know what, that's not a good file type, so I'm going to go back. I want to make sure that this is, oh, this guy's adorable. So here, maybe it'll keep it in a new tab. There we go. We want to make sure that it's a JPEG, GIF, or PNG. We don't want like a WebP file or anything like that. So just double check that as you're making sure. And I'm going to put it into my images folder, and I'm just going to get rid of some of this extra. All right, so I have that. I'm going to close that out. So we want an image in your images folder. You want to make sure that that stays within. So in your images folder, that's where your JPEGs, your GIFs, your PNGs, those are where all your images are going to go. All right, let's go back here to brackets. And how I like to set this up is I like to kind of keep my brackets on the one side of my monitor and then open the browser on the other. Now, if you have a small laptop, you're not going to be able to do that. So, and that's okay. But just know that you want to, at some point, it's nice to have things side by side. All right, let's get started. So on the left, I'm going to make a new file. So if I control-click with my mouse, I can hit New File at the top, and I'm going to call this index.html. Your index.html, all lowercase, is your home page for your document. I'm going to just make this a little larger by hitting Command+ on my keyboard to make it larger. And I'm also going to make one more file today, and it's going to be called style.css. So you really need to add these extensions so it knows what file format you are working with. All right, let's jump back to that index. Now, the basic anatomy of a HTML page is as follows. HTML, open, close, tags, head, open, close, tags, and body. So what we're looking at here is the start of our HTML document, the end of our HTML document. This is always going to be your first tag, and this is always going to be your last tag. Everything that is on your HTML page will be between these two. And we have the head and the body underneath that. Always going to be like that as well. In the head, we're going to place the title, and we're also going to link to our CSS. So to link to our CSS, we're going to do link rel equals, and let brackets help you with typing. Like if you see something, like I know this next one's style sheet, so I'm going to just hit S on the keyboard, and I can click on my keyboard like down to the word style sheet. The less you can type, no pun intended there, the better. Let brackets type it for you. It's going to help with typos. And then we're going to do href, and we're going to link to our style sheet. So in the head of your HTML document, this never changes. These are just like rules. It's not up for debate. You're always going to have your title, open tag and close tag, and then you're going to link to your style sheet. The style sheet doesn't have this. This does not exist. You notice it's in red. It's one of the few standalone tags that we're going to be talking about. Now I'm going to give it a title. I'm just going to call it Day 1 Website. So the title is going to show up in two places. If I preview my website by going to this little live preview button in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see that the tag of title is going to be up here in the tab at the top. And then also if I bookmark this page, this is what the bookmark will be named. So it's really important to have a good name for your title that makes sense. It's also something that helps with SEO, which we'll talk about later. So it's helping with searching. So when Google is searching for a website and is trying to find you or your client, this is one of the ways it's going to find you. So these are always going to be in your head. Now we're going to go down to the body. And the first tag I always teach is the H1 through H6. This tag is a headline. Text. We're going to do tons of text on this. So this is a headline 1. And these are pre-existing tags. So there's an H1, there's an H2, there's an H3, 4, 5, and 6. That is it. There is not a 7, there is not an 8, there's not a 9, there's not a 10. It stops here at 6. So you can't go any higher than that. But these, whoops, not 16. These are a lot of headlines to work with for your web page. And we'll talk about how you can use classes to modify those. So each one of these is a headline. If I, again, preview again, I'm going to hit my little preview. You can see these are all predetermined, pre-formatted headline sizes, H1 being the largest and H6 being the smallest. I'm just going to keep this over to the side so we can kind of see it. And again, we are going to be using these in different ways. You could actually change this and have the H1 be the smallest when we get to CSS in a little bit. So H1 through H6. And then finally there's the paragraph. P tag. So what I want you to do, this is important as you're typing these out, is I want you to know that the P tag is for paragraphs. And there is no such thing as P2, P3, P4. I only see that in students' work, and it doesn't exist. There's only a P, just the P, no P2, 3, 4, 5. So you just want to be mindful of that going forward. All right, so let's learn something else. We can see over here now. We have headlines and text. First thing I want to talk about is images. So we're going to use these headlines that we just created and kind of make this into a learning website. So just hit enter between your your H1 and your H2. Notice if you hit enter, nothing changes on your website. White space does not matter. I could have 100 enters, or I could have these butt up against each other, and it's not going to change at all. Now, what I want to do is I want to change the headline of the H1. Let's change this to images. And then let's say, let's keep that H2. We'll do as a subhead. And our subhead for this will be, there are 2 ways to insert images on a website. This is factual. So images, there are 2 ways to insert images, and we're going to go over both of them. The first way is by just doing an image tag. So that would be less than img source equals, and then I would navigate to my image that we have placed into our images folder. So you can see there it's saying here's an image, and the source of it is in my images folder and called shelter-dog. And you can see over here that we have an image and it's working fine. Now the second way we could add an image is by making it a background in our CSS. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to make a tag. I'm going to just call it header, open, close. This is another tag, just like everything else we're using. And we're going to put nothing in it. We're not going to put the image in here. We're going to put it in our CSS. So let's hop over to our style sheet here. And the first tag I usually do in my style sheet is body squiggles. So curly braces here. We have open curly brace, close curly brace. Now why do I usually do body first is because in our HTML, our body is the first tag. It's the holding everything else. So, just keeping organization. I try to go in the order. Now, the second thing we have in our document is an H1, and then an H2, and then I'll probably do this header that we just added. So I'm basically copying the same tags that are over here, body, H1, H2, header, and then I'm putting these curly braces after it. So anything between these curly braces is going to be the rules that you're giving to these tags. So for instance, if I go into body, I can do background color, antique white, sorry. And you can see how that's going to change the color of the whole page. I can go to my H1 and say font size 32 pixels. That didn't change that much. Let's make it larger. 62 pixels. There we go. And we can see how that really changes that H1 there. Same thing here with the H2. I can say font family monospaced. And we can see how that changes that. So this is how we actually style our website. And if you keep good organization between these two, it's going to be really helpful. Now, like we were talking before, there's another way to add our image. And that's within the header. So whenever you're adding an image with the CSS, is you have to give it a width. So I'm just going to say width 100%. And you have to give it a height or it's going to collapse. So I'm going to say 300 pixels. So I'm giving some width and height. And then I can do a background image here. So I do background dash image URL. Let the computer guide you. And it's open parentheses with images and then semicolon. And here you can see we have the same exact image underneath because I have 2 of them right in a row. Now, what's the difference between these two? Now, we could go into this more in depth, but I'm going to do no repeat, background repeat, no repeat. You can kind of see it's repeating there. If we look at this, there's a couple different things. So if I come to my site, I could rip and drag this first image off. I can't rip and drag this background image off because it's in the background, meaning I could put something on top of it. So I could put text on top of this image, as you can see here. This is putting text on top of it. This I can't put text on top of. This is on the top layer. So, I mean, in that case, I can come over here and also say in the header, I want the font size to be 30 pixels, and I want the color of it to be white, and I want it to be text align center, and I can do all these things to this that I cannot do when it is just an image this way. So 2 different ways to put images into your website, super important. And one, you can put images on top of, text or another image on top of. I can put another image on top of this as well, and the other one you can't. All right, so let's move on here. So let's go down to this H3, and let's go over now 2 different kinds of lists. So this is really basic. I'll hit enter a couple times. But there's an unordered list, which is UL, unordered. That if you have list items in it, LIs, you can make a list. So let's just say, like, I want milk at the store, I want bread at the store, and I want eggs. And you can kind of see what that's doing over there on the right. So it makes a bulleted list, an unordered, so no numbers. Or I can copy and paste this exact thing because I'm not going to type that again. And this time I'm going to do an ordered list, so OL. And that does an ordered list with 1, 2, 3. So these are 2 different kinds of lists that you might want to use on your website. All right, then let's go down here to the next one, your next H4, and I'm going to say this is 2 different types of links. So when we're talking about links, there's 2 different types. There's external and internal. And whenever you do a link, so a link's going to go somewhere. It's going to be a clickable item that's going to go somewhere else, either to another page on your website or to another page on the whole internet. So if it's staying on your website, it's an internal link. If it's going somewhere else on the web, like Facebook, Instagram, Kutztown, it's an external link. So how you do a link in code is href equals, and then in quotes, and this is where you're going to tell it where it's going to go. So let's do an external link first. So I'm going to say, let's say this is going to Kutztown. I'm pretty sure it has to be an S, I think. Double check that. Copy and paste is always the safest way, right? Yeah, so it's an S, secure, FTP, STP. And then, so it's going here. I'm going to close that. And this is an A tag. So an A tag is a link. It's an active link that's going to go somewhere else. The ahref is just a hyperreference of where it's going to go. So it's going to go to this. And then whatever's between the open A and the close A is what is going to be clickable. So in this case, if I say, click here to go to Kutztown, exclamation mark. You'll see here that over here it becomes an active link. It'll be underlined by default, probably blue or purple, depending if you've been there before. And then an internal link is going to look exactly the same, ahref equals in quotes, but it's going to go to a page on your site, like the About page. So you can see here, these are both links, but one's going to go to an external link and one's staying on your website. Now, one big note that I always like is that if you're doing an external website, you want to do target equals underscore blank, and you want to add that to your open tag. And the reason you want to add that is it's going to open in a new tab. So it's not going to lose the site that you're already on. It's going to keep your site open, but open a new tab. All right, so that's an internal and an external links. All right, so let's do one more thing here. We'll keep this last one here. H6, we'll leave that. Just make a note that says headlines are only H1 through H6. I like making those notes. All right, so H5, let's do something with that. Let's just do a div. So what is a div? I'm going to make a paragraph underneath to explain that. So a div is an invisible box. It doesn't have any width or height. It doesn't have any color. It's a ghost until CSS is added. So it's just this invisible box. So let's make a div, and then we'll kind of show you that. So a div is going to look like this. It's just going to be open and close. It's going to look like any of these other tags that we have used, open and close. And if you look over here, there's nothing to it. We can't see it. We know that it's kind of right here in between these two, but there's nothing there to really see. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to our style sheet, and we'll add this div. So I'm going to put div, and then curly braces. And first thing I always do when I do a div is I give it a width and a height. So I'll give it a width of, let's say, let's get in the habit of just doing max width of 500 pixels. And then I always give it a height. I'll say 500 pixels again. So we'll make a little box. And you can see that now it's kind of like an invisible box there. So after you give it a width and a height, I usually either give it a background image, which we did up here before with the header, or a background color. So we'll do background color, and I'll just do aqua. Now we can actually see this box. So to see a div, you have to really have a width, a height, and a background color if there's nothing in it. Now if there's stuff in it, it's going to expand. And then the magic thing to center a div is margin auto. There is only two ways to center things. Make a note of this here. Make a comment, sorry. One is margin auto. The other is text align center. So I get that question a lot, is how do I move this to the middle of the page? Well, the key is here is one or the other. Margin auto is going to center a div, and text align center is going to center text or an image tag in that div. So you can see here now, if I make my window, it's always going to stay center in the page, centered in the page, which is really nice. And you're going to want that on a lot of things. So that's a div. And we're going to have a lot of divs so we can keep things organized and give things color and space. All right, guys, that's our basic 101 of just a couple of our review of what are images and links and divs and everything else. And it's just going to get more interesting from here. So save this root folder, zip it, and upload it.